Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Game Vault podcast stream. I'm your host, Mark, and we're back with the news hour here on July 5th, 2026 is when we're recording this, which means it's smack dab in the middle of the two most important days in July, which is July 4th. The obvious thing, it has the hot dog eating contest, which is the best thing to ever happen on July 4th. And then tomorrow, or when you're hearing this, today, July 6th, is your host's birthday. I will be turning a young 41. So we will be celebrating by beating UN Squadron tonight. So just be on the lookout for that if you're listening to this on Monday. Hopefully everybody had a fun July 4th weekend with the 3-day thing. I took advantage and went and saw Supergirl. And as I laid out over on TC Tam's Discord, that's what they call this movie Discord, which you can join for $1. It's patreon.com/TCTAMpod. We discuss video games, movies, music, books, anything over there. It's a great spot. I might start throwing some polls over there for this here stream. Maybe questions of the week that we can, talk about next week. Probably going to start that next week. I just need a couple thoughts, especially with what we're going to talk about today on the news. Might be the perfect week to start question of the week over there. I went and saw Supergirl. Quick synopsis here. Acting is fine. Casting was good for the most part. Couple of bad choices. Story's very thin in terms of the plot, really. They try to go a little deep, but it doesn't really come through. The writing isn't great, but I'm not looking for, Oscar-worthy writing from Supergirl. Millie Alcock is great as Supergirl. Really gets the vibe. I just wish they would have done a little bit more of the Daughter of Tomorrow graphic novel that this is based off of than they did. I've been hearing most of the specifics from people I know that have read it more recently, and the stuff I've heard about it or remember hearing about it would have been a little bit better than what they did in this movie. But overall, she's perfect to be in the rest of the DCU or whatever they're doing with Superman there. So it's a fine movie. Got me out of the heat for a couple hours. Ate a full thing of popcorn. So good day all around. But in the meantime, I have played some video games. I'll start with the things I've been streaming. So as I mentioned, for my birthday stream tonight, we will be finishing UN Squadron because your boy beat 2 levels this week. The most diabolical part about the 1 level is that you don't know what you need for that level until you get in the level. Like, it's not even like, I just take all my weapons. Like, there's a specific plane that works for that level. Now, the most expensive plane may also work. I'm not sure. I haven't gotten and probably won't get the most expensive plane. But there's one specific plane that works for that level, and you need to know that going in. So you could get a great run going and just not be able to finish it because you won't be able to hit the boss. The boss is on a ceiling above you, so you have to have things that shoot up or are, what's it called, homing missiles. So maybe you lucked out and you had homing missiles, or you had that thing that's a ring of fire to hit it. But without that, you're screwed. You can't hit it. So once we figured that out and I got really good at that level, we eventually beat it. I beat the other one a little quicker. That one's a little more chaotic of a level in terms of how many enemies there are on screen, because there's things on the ground and things in the air. And just kind of trying to navigate without getting hit. And then when I got to the boss was rather easy. It was just knowing, basically I think I got to the boss twice or 3 times. And it was just knowing which of my super weapons to use at what time. Essentially, and when to dodge and when to shoot, essentially. Came in. It wasn't like that the other one where there was a thing with the boss. You needed to 100% do this to win. Like, there are multiple ways to do it. I just needed to figure out the easiest pattern for me. So we beat those 2 levels. We're heading on to what I believe is the last level. There may be one more after this. Maybe. I'm not sure. But on this map that we're on, it's this level. And I think there's 8 or 9 levels or something. And I think this will be the 9th level. So, yeah. Yeah, we're going to finish it off and then we'll move on to game 49. And, yeah. Yeah, it should be pretty fun. Time tomorrow. We'll celebrate. We'll come in a little early. Maybe like 8:30 so we can, talk about everything beforehand. But, yeah, UN Squadron almost done. I will announce what the next game is if I do beat it on stream. And then on Saturday, we played Trails in the Sky second chapter. I'm going to beat it next week. Like, here's the thing. I started talking about this for the Twitch people that were here in the pre-show. Basically, we had problems with the drop frames and all that stuff, so it's a little convoluted there's a whole chunk missing while I was in a battle that I didn't want to Alt F4 to restart the stream because I didn't know if the game would crash, because the game sometimes crashes when you Alt F4. Or no, I'm sorry. Whatever. Alt Tab, not Alt F4. God, I'm a little tired. I apologize. Alt Tab. Back to OBS. Here. I should probably be doing 2 screens, but, it's fine. I rarely have to Alt Tab back for this. But yeah, so I was in the middle of this battle, and I didn't realize the pattern for the battle. So what it was, just to lay it out, this isn't spoilers or anything. This was a battle when you open a chest. I think it was, or no, it was a battle when we got to the final dungeon. To go into the final dungeon, you get attacked by these things before going in. So it was one main person that had like 16,000 hit points or something insane. It's the main guy. And then he had 2 guys that were like 4,800, 5,000, something like that. And what I realized in the battle was basically all these guys did was heal. They either healed themselves or they healed the main guy. And then after a while, no matter how many of those other guys were on the screen, every so often, it might have been like every 4 turns or something like that. I didn't think to count, and it's not on. Well, I did locally record, so you'll see it on YouTube. He would call another ally and add another one of those healing bots, essentially, to the board. And I was going around trying to kill all the healing bots and then chipping away at him. I eventually started to do that, got almost down to beating him. Would have been a shitload of experience points if I did this. And then I got killed because some of the healing drones, when they're below a certain threshold of HP, they self-destruct. And they wiped out 3 of my 4 party members. And then there was like 3 turns before the last one could go, and she died immediately. Or I got one more turn or something, or whatever. But anyway, someone else self-destructed, and it cleared the board again. So then that's when I realized that what I wasn't doing in that battle was taking advantage of sabotaging, the thing. So what I did was I left 2 heal bots on the thing, and I hit them with slow, both of them, and then I would use 2 people to anytime they got started to cast a spell. I would have 2 people ready to hit them to stop the casting, and then I would use Joshua to do the delay turn if we needed. If I couldn't get the 2 dedicated people to stop the casting of the heal, to them, it would delay it so they would come back around so those people could hit them. And then I just start pounding away on the main guy. He called a couple people in, and every time a new person came in, I hit them with a slow spell, and then went at it. The only thing that complicated things a bit is sometimes when they died, they would do a last throws thing, which would give raised defense and speed. So they would go back to neutral speed until that wore off. So I beat it much quicker this time. I was just hitting it, and anytime my CP got over 100, I was just nailing with the ultimate attack, just hitting them as hard as I could, while healing, earth wall, slow down, just constantly just strategizing more than just trying to win by out hitting them. And it was also because I took 2 of my lower ranked people there just to get them levels. Would have been much faster if I would have took even Shira. I didn't take Shira. I took Olivier and Father Kevin because they're my lowest level characters. So the battle I lost took an hour, roughly. Lost it. Then the other one took like 30 minutes. So I was already an hour and a half on one battle that we could have used to explore the dungeon. Because we got through the dungeon, got everything, got to the boss. We fought Blue Blanc, and I did that in one turn, one go, no replay needed. And we would have been able to do another section, and maybe I would have had enough energy to push through. But yeah, that's kind of where we stopped. So I brought along, we got 2 new party members, and they were levels 86 and 87, or 85 and 86. Which was above my Joshua and Estelle. So I just brought them along because I'm like, I am not doing this again. I am pushing through, getting to the first boss, and then we'll call it. And then maybe I'll go get Shira and someone else. Or Shira and one of those people to sort of finish it off. So, yeah, that's where we are there. Like I said, we should finish it on Saturday. And then I'll be on to Neo Fantasian. Finally. Since we're probably close to a year going with Trails at this point, with the weeks off and holidays and times I skipped for other games. So yeah, playing that well. And then outside of stream, my main thing I played this week was, since I do have Game Pass Ultimate, I was able to download NCAA 27 on July 2nd for 10 hours. And also, technically, because I have EA Play through Ultimate, I get another 10 hours, can't transfer saves, on EA Play. So if I ever ran out of the 10 hours here, thank you, Dan. He said happy almost birthday for those of you in the audio listeners. So I could have played another 10 hours on here, but I didn't have enough time with things going on this weekend to get to 10 hours, which I am disappointed by. But what I can say so far is I love the new Dynasty so far. I started out Toledo. The one thing I like so far, and I don't remember if I was in the same boat here, but legitimately, like, Toledo can only pull like 2 stars at the most, maybe a 3, but a lot of 1s, and you're sort of like picking and choosing. I barely have to worry about NIL at a lower school right now, just to get people on the team. But if I wanted to go higher, the NIL system, I was basically using this trial to just figure out the NIL system. They don't use money or real world money because that would just make it just seem like contracts. So you get dynasty points, and you put that towards your NIL. And sort of, your players have NIL that's on the roster. Your people you recruit have it. And it's sort of a balancing act. And then you also use those dynasty points to upgrade your school. So, it's a good system. I like it so far. I also like the idea of, essentially being a little more transparent in terms of picking your assistant coaches and figuring out how to make them match up with you. So that whole mode is great so far. We'll see what happens when I'm 100 hours into it by December, and see if it's still clicking. Game-wise, the game feels better. The running feels a little better. There are some blocking that still makes running the best thing to do, but there have been times where, it's not one of those things where I can spam the same play. It seems like people do get play recognition if they have that high of a stat, and then the D tackles start noticing where you're going, and you have to change it up and stuff like that. The other thing I noticed is that I do the passing like classic, where the accuracy of the quarterback matters, and not how good you are with the button. And I already noted, one of the fun things I noticed was I had a quarterback that had little lower accuracy, not too low, but every time I would throw an out route or something, that required a little bit of precision, he would tend to throw it low, and the receiver had to go down and get it, and that would stop me from doing the thing I was doing in 26, where everything was basically at the chest, and then you could just turn up field, and it made out routes kind of broken. Here, because of lower accuracy, he still makes the catch, but he gets less than he would with a better pass. Maybe with a better quarterback, those throws are better, and it's broken again, but at this lower level, it wasn't. Defense felt the same. The only thing I got to figure out how to work as a defensive lineman. I had it down basically to be pretty good at breaking the blocks, but maybe because I was using a lower level person, maybe that's why. And I've just gotten so used to having high level talent. So yeah, the one disappointing thing I had, so I'll get to that last. The crowd work is great. I played it with volume up and not listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube video. The crowd is fantastic. The crowd sounds great. The music choices and stuff like that are pretty well done while you're in the game. The only thing I was disappointed by was the commentary a little bit. I'm wondering if it gets patched or anything on next Thursday on July 9th here. It's just it still had the dumb thing where they added a lot more detail. And I know this is going on too long about college football, which many of you out there might not care about, but it is one of my passions. So, I don't get to talk about this much to people. So, the what's it called? The things they added were great. So I'll just start with the positives. The announce team seems to know the stats of your players from that season. Like they know how many touchdowns they have. They know how much yards they have in the whole season, not just that game, and stuff like that. B, they know the history of some of your players. Like on Toledo, I have a running back that was a transfer from Penn State, and they mention it a little more than I want them to. Like almost every game, it seems like it's like a recycled thing, but they would mention it like, hey, so I think it's Colin. It might be something else. We'll use Colin. Colin White here is a what's it called? Transfer from Penn State. He's looking pretty good. He's might not be playing at a Big Four level, but he could start on many teams at that level. It's like awesome. I wonder how that's going to be in the next season. When you have your actual recruits and actual transfers happen in the game and not things they knew about going in. That's what I'm wondering will happen. Three, they had the thing I like, even though it was weird, but like if you don't sit and just listen to them talk, and then you start to play. If you make a big play, the play-by-play guy interrupts the color guy and announces and calls the big play. They do this in FIFA or FC, where they'll be like, "Hey, so we're going to go to so and so for the goal report," and they'll be like, "Over in Manchester," and then as that person's talking, if you start getting close to the goal, it goes, "Hold on 1 second," and then it calls the play. They seem to be doing that here, but in a slightly weirder way. The halftime stuff was still a little janky, in terms of, this is very particular and very nitpicky here, but they do the halftime report, and they're talking about there's possible upset and talking about the stats, and they show the stats and they have the score, which is fantastic. I haven't seen that much, since 2K5 for ESPN. I think Madden may have done it, but sometimes I don't remember. But they did all that. But the one thing was it skips to the things happening elsewhere screen where it has a bunch of scores on the screen, and the voiceover guy goes, "Oh, and a major upset happening here on the screen," and there were no major upsets going on that screen. All the ranked teams were winning, and it wasn't even close in some of the, and it was just all right, maybe they were talking about the game that had a number 6 was beating number 2 in the main spotlight. Maybe that's what they were talking about, but it got transplanted to this section, so kinks to be worked out. But number one, I didn't get far. I'm only 3 games in. I wonder if as the year goes along, the big test will be when the game comes out, if there's any patches. But the test for the broadcasting going along, and I have not had Joel Klatt and, the big team, so I have Reese Davis and the B guys. Is that as you're in week 9 and your guy's going for a Heisman or your guy's a semifinalist for an award, do they mention that in the middle of the game? Not like an opening thing when you first go out there and they go, "Hey, so and so's up for the Heisman, blah blah blah," and don't mention it again. I'm wondering if in the third quarter they're like, "Hey, got 150 yards on the day, that'll only help his chances for the Heisman," that kind of stuff. I want to see that they had that kind of stuff in there. Even if it's boilerplate or anything, I hope they have that in there. So those are the positives. The negatives on the commentary, at least with this commentary team, they seem to recycle a lot of the same lines. Again, early access, 7 days early. Maybe it gets updated. Maybe I just got unlucky. And also, they still do a lot of the dumb things where they just call the person the receiver or the running back or the quarterback. Instead of just using their last name, which I don't know how much of a difference, sound editing that would make to just, instead of saying the quarterback, say Myers. Not that you can create yourself in the game. Well, you can in Road to Glory, but in a dynasty, these are these actual kids. They have names. This isn't randomly generated names or just numbers. Say the last name instead of saying the position. Now, if you say, "Great catch by the wide receiver," that's fine. But if you say, "The receiver did this," or "The receiver has 80 yards," without which receiver, that's the specificity that I'm talking about. There. So I'm happy to get in. I'm so excited to get into it next week. So next week you'll have a full report of a full weekend of the full game. To just dive in, so even more deeper one than this. I'll probably have an off season, I'll be able to see all that stuff for those of you who care. Maybe Metal Militia isn't getting it on release day, probably. We're probably both getting it on release day, so we'll be able to tackle it, pun intended, at that point. Maybe I'll ask him to share me some of his thoughts, and I'll read it aloud next week if he gets to play it this weekend. So that's everything I played. I mean, I played a little bit of FIFA, but that's just because I'm soccer pilled right now. Nothing really coming out of that. But yeah, that'll do it. Be sure to let me know what you guys have been playing. it's getting to that time of year when, you know, games are coming out that we probably want to talk about. And, it'd just be fun to discuss it. Like I said, the Patreon over at TC Tam, they called us a movie. Patreon.com/TCTAM pod for just $1. You can join us. I'm going to start putting polls up. I'm going to put one up tomorrow so that I can make sure this is out in the wild and people have heard it. For question of the week, so like Ant does his general question of the week, I'm going to do one that pertains particularly to this, and I'll read the responses on the podcast here. Sort of like a response rewind or something like that. So be sure, if you're in that thing already, just comment about the episodes. I might start dropping the episodes there if I can figure out how to embed it and do all that crazy stuff. So yeah, so I get a little more interactivity over there. So without further ado, let's get on to the news, and some huge news that may or may not be the question of the week. PlayStation announces that the end of this games starting in January 2028. Which, by the way, that date implies two things. Besides, we know when it'll be over for PlayStation. And also, it's probably when they will be announcing their, new console. I'm assuming their new console will be all digital. So they'll probably either be releasing it or it will be announced around this time. I also do like this photo for those of you watching the video. This is like from 3 years ago. There's like this College Football 25. There's WWE 2K24 in this photo. So kind of funny. Anyway, following this date, new games from all publishers will be available on the PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital formats only, Sony said. The transition to digital won't affect games that have already been released or will be released prior to January 2028 in disc format. Sony said, as consumer preferences and the broader entertainment industry continue to shift away from physical discs to digital, physical game disc production for all new games releasing on PlayStation consoles will be discontinued starting January 2028. Sony added, this is a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adapt to customer trends as the general preference for digital media significantly outpaces physical disc. This transition will enable us to align more closely with how most of our community prefers to access and play games. We'll continue to prioritize our resources to drive innovation in how players can access games and provide choices as to where players prefer to purchase new games, whether that's at retailers or PlayStation Store. We remain committed to delivering a world-class gaming experience to our fans, and we thank you for continued support. Like most platforms, PlayStation games have been increasingly shifting to digital in recent years. In last business year, ended April 2026, Sony Interactive Entertainment reported 78% of full game sales were digital downloads. In 2013, when Sony first began offering full game downloads with the PlayStation 4, digital accounted for 13% of sales, according to Ampere data. PlayStation 5 was Sony's first home console to launch with a digital-only version. Then in 2023, it launched a redesigned console that came without a disc drive as standard, with users having to purchase an add-on to use physical games. Yeah, so essentially, so as Night Duck said, I'll read it for the audio listeners. So the real driving force is that they get a 30% cut of all sales, and buying used PS4 disc is very cheap and still work great. Essentially, two things with the date, in my thought. A, it gives them a long enough time that if for some reason the fan backlash is so large, kind of like what happened to Xbox One, that they have plenty of time to revert before it would cause any chaos in their system. And two, it also gives plenty of time for people to forget that it's happening when it actually happens. And then people just go, whatever. the majority of people. But the main thing, which I have a story coming up, so I'll only touch this lightly, is basically the preservation side of this with digital games. It's one of the main things with going all digital is like you don't really own your games. It's like I think it was either Sony or it's probably Sony, one of the digital platforms for movies. They lost the licensing to some of them, and that you will lose access to those movies or something like that. I should have looked up the story. And that's what's going to happen with games here. So, yeah. And as I've been saying to friends and family, talking about this because this stuff is making like mainstream news along with the rise in console prices, is I'm like, I'll be fine. I'm turning 41 as, not to dox myself, as of the dropping of this podcast. So, as much as I do game, since I am a single man here, my gaming is much less than it was in the past when I was younger. And then, so if I'm not able to get the next console or something, I might switch to for the next big game I absolutely want to play, which is the Ocarina of Time remake. I have my Mister. I have the way to get totally legal games to play on PC if anything happens to the Mister. I have all my old systems with with a lot of the games that I want to play constantly. I have disc for, or I can go get disc for. So someone like me is not going to be really affected if going all digital and high prices and all just collapses the market, because I'll be perfectly fine. Maybe it's a way to get me away from games and saving a little money or something, by not having the next new thing. But yeah. So, but I'm worried about it's already hard enough to get kids, to understand about, going to console platforms rather than playing Roblox or play on PC with their friends. Making it very expensive and not have the box in store, I guess they'll still have the boxes in store. I'm just confused by all that. But, not having that, I don't know. It's just, I guess they'll be fine because they'll just go back to playing Roblox if the thing collapses. I just don't think a lot of the people, maybe they do know. Hopefully they do know. They do make a lot of money. The potential full collapse this could make in terms of profit. Once you price things too high or make things too hard to obtain for customers. So we'll see. Moving on. Just to warn, first couple stories are all about this. Because there are a lot of different angles that came out. Another thing that Sony dropped is that Sony is closing the PlayStation Store on PC and Vita. Speaking of being talked out of things, which is why I think there's a problem, Sony had previously attempted to close the store in 2021, but made a U-turn after basically backlash. So the statement, after nearly 2 decades of supporting the PS3 console generation, we want to let you know that we'll be closing the PlayStation Store on PS3 as well as on PS Vita. PlayStation Store and PS3 will close in select markets starting this year, followed by global closures for PS3 and PS Vita next year. That means new content purchases will no longer be possible once the PlayStation Store closes on these devices. To ease the transition, players will still be able to download previously purchased content after the closing date for the foreseeable future. Which, by the way, that can have an end date too, but that's why foreseeable future is carrying a lot of weight in that sentence. According to Sony, the PS3 store will first close in Mexico, Honduras, and Nicaragua in August 2026, followed by additional Latin American and Middle Eastern countries in late 2026. The PS and Vita stores in all other countries will then close by July 2027. As PlayStation Store continues to evolve to support modern commerce systems, including updating payment processing standards, PS3 and PS Vita are no longer able to support these updates at the level required, Sony says. We know this may be disappointing to PS3 and PS Vita players who hold a special place in their hearts. for this generation of gaming. PS3 and PS Vita represents an important era in our PlayStation history, so this was not an easy decision for us to make. As we continue to expand the PlayStation experience on newer devices that most of our users are playing on today, we need to focus more resources on delivering the best gaming experience on these platforms as we look ahead towards the future. As mentioned, Sony previously attempted to close the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita digital stores back in 2001, announcing that it was going to close to the stores along with the PSP store that summer. After player backlash, Sony U-turned on the decision, with then SIE President Jim Ryan stating, "Upon further reflection, it is clear we made a wrong decision here." That is where the little glimmer of hope comes in for people thinking they can reverse the decision on all digital, but I think it's two different things. This is all digital sales. These weren't hard copy PS3s, these weren't hard copy PS Vita games, these were digital sales that PlayStation was getting all the cut for, being sold here. So that's why they kept these stores open. Completely different situation than the digital, complete the digital, no physical announcement they just made. Now, maybe they can be talked out of it, but it is different leadership now, so who knows? But essentially, they're sort of, it seems like they're, trying to coalesce, all their stuff towards this full digital store that they're going to announce with the PlayStation 6. So not having the bandwidth and all they need to keep these stores open will help in that end. But yeah, the sad part about the PS3 thing is there are a lot of games that are locked to PS3. Metal Gear Solid 4 is no longer that because it's on the collection. But there are a lot of digital-only releases on there, and fighting games and things like that. And that's the only place where you can get good PlayStation 1 classic games, purchase them and not just play them through PlayStation Plus. So, if you have any interest of owning those games without going through any dubious means, I would get on there before it closes next year. Next up, we have Sony tells developers they'll still be able to make disc, but only for older games. Plus, PlayStation will offer developers some form of retail boxed product. PlayStation has told developers that they will still be able to purchase orders for disc games beyond January 2028, as long as they're for titles released before its all-digital cutoff. The PS5 firm will also offer developers a way to release their games as physical retail products with download codes, according to a report. Earlier this week, Sony Interactive Entertainment announced to the public that it will stop manufacturing physical games, meaning developers will no longer be able to release their own disc games beyond that date. Sony added the caveat that the transition to digital won't affect games that had already been released in disc format before January 2028. Now, a separate message sent to developers and publishers via its private developer portal, seen by GameFile, adds some clarification on what the latter part will mean in practice. For the partner message, Sony made a point that publishers will still be able to place reorders for existing PlayStation disc games, meaning that a PlayStation 5 game released in 2027 or earlier will still be able to make copies after January 2028. Sony told partners that ordering process for discs will change in some to-be-announced ways, according to GameFile. It also told partners that it will provide publishers with the opportunity to release new games at retails using digital codes, with more details to come. Potentially, this could come in the form of download codes and game boxes like GTA 6. News that developers will still be able to manufacture older game discs follows a report that Sony's largest production site is already preparing its staff to move away from manufacturing discs. So yeah, things that are released, it's not going to be like January 2028. Those things can never be produced again. As long as your game is released by the deadline, you can reorder games. How long that lasts, who knows? But it is, and like this last quote says, PlayStation 6 is likely to, at minimum, not include a physical disc drive. So we'll see. Will that be backwards compatible? If it is, they'll have to add an external drive for people that have disc, or is there a way to? Another company is doing this, is transitioning your disc to digital within your PlayStation account. All right, next up, like I said, it's a long line of stories here. And here's the thing I alluded to earlier. Video Game History Foundation calls on the ESA to find a way to legally preserve digital-only games for research. Asking museums to download a copy of GTA 6 and hope it'll run in 50 years is not a solution. The Video Game History Foundation has called on trade groups like the Entertainment Software Association to find solutions for preserving digital games on a long-term basis. Sony's double announcement on Wednesday that it will no longer be making disc versions of its games from January 2028 and will be closing the PS3 and PS Vita stores next year has renewed debate about video game preservation. Some argue that a large portion of today's modern games may become lost media decades from now, not only due to the closure of digital stores, but because many of the games now rely on connections to online servers, which will be eventually turned off. In a statement reacting to both decisions, the Video Game History Foundation says the decision to stop releasing games on disc won't actually have a large immediate impact on professional game preservation, but they haven't considered disc the best way to preserve games for some time. This is unfortunate news for those who still prefer buying games on physical media, and is certainly a hit to consumer rights, the resale market, and game creators whose business relies on the physical market. The Video Games History Foundation statement reads, but from the perspective of professional preservationists, this doesn't have as much of an impact as you might expect. The reality is that the vast majority of video games produced over the last 2 decades were not made for dedicated home video consoles, let alone pressed to physical media discs. And even when they were released on physical disc, a day one digital patch was all but guaranteed, meaning that even a disc is preserving data in an inaccessible way. It may not represent the game that people actually played. Museums and archives have been preparing for this for a while, with the expectation that putting disc on a shelf isn't going to be a long-term solution for preserving new games. So essentially, basically it's just a big long, you can go to Video History Foundation's Blue Sky for the full details, but essentially, yeah, this is the main thing. Like, to be honest, I could give 2 shits about if I need to buy all digital and not physical. I'm not a physical, I like having physical copies of things, but it's not the end of the world if I can't get something physical. I know we have a couple of people in chat that are much more on the physical side, which is why I want to put this question up on the in the Discord. But this is the main reason I don't like what Sony's doing, because coming from a historical standpoint of making sure that not every game that's ever released, maybe that's what the VGHF is trying to do, but just for the cultural touchstones, or like GTA 6 is one they say, having the ability to be able to show that to a researcher, if a researcher is looking at how media grew from cartridges to PlayStation 6, not having a whole chunk of things because they went all digital or never released a physical copy is a problem. Music and movies still release physical things as well, even though they don't really want to, but it makes it, and a copy of the physical thing I think goes to the Library of Congress or some way of preserving it in that way. It would just suck if an entire history of all this stuff is lost because Sony or Xbox didn't want to pay a couple extra $1 million to print disc for all games released. Now, if they want to print just one game on a disc and hand it over to the Video Game History Foundation and let them have it and maybe put it into museums by copying that disc or some agreement or something. They can figure out something like that. But yeah, I really hope they figure this out because preservation is a big deal. And probably the thing I'm most passionate about in terms of this subject here. Because I'm a person that loves to go to the library if I get the chance, or have done in the past, and go to those old things where you can, there's film reel things where you can pull up old newspapers. That's pretty cool to do, just to look back at the way things were written and things, how big stories were covered and things like that, and how they were truly covered and not how we assumed they were covered. So same with video games here. You'll be able to get the real truth instead of, what somebody assumed a game like, GTA had in it. So, yeah. And the other thing I mentioned is our next story. Xbox is reportedly planning a way for players to convert their discs into digital copies. And I don't know if they're going to mention it in this story, but I believe Xbox 360, or maybe it was one, you were able to put the disc in and then you could download it to your console so you didn't need the disc anymore. I think that had something like that. Not entirely sure. I remember there being something like that. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Xbox is reportedly planning a way for players to convert. I already read that. As reported by The Verge, the feature, which is reportedly codenamed Disc to Digital, is being tested internal Xbox testers at the moment. When players insert a compatible Xbox disc and install and play their game as normal, they will be granted a digital entitlement for the game as if it had been purchased on the Xbox Store instead. This means players can remove the disc and can continue to play the game as if it had been a digital purchase without all the existing benefits that it entails. As such, if the digital version of the game is available for streaming on Xbox Cloud Gaming, players with a Game Pass subscription will be able to stream it. If it's a Play Anywhere title, they will get access to the PC version. The report says that the feature is intended to work with Xbox Series X and Xbox One disc, but not 360 or original Xbox games. In order to present widespread sharing of each game, the digital entitlement will also be tied to each disc. This means if the player gives their disc to a friend, trade it in, or try to play it with a different Xbox profile, the digital entertainment entitlement will swap over from account to account. Disc will reportedly continue to work after they've been installed, and players will only lose the entitlement to keep playing if their disc is given to a friend or sold to someone else. The news comes on the same day that Sony has announced it will no longer be releasing games on disc. And so, still shitty, but it would solve the problem of needing to get up and put your physical disc in each time, which is the downside for some people with physical media. I do like the idea in just thinking off it's not a fun story, but it made me laugh thinking about this as I was reading this. Just the idea of you trading in your game to a GameStop or some local place, and then just keep trying it until it, and then once you don't have access to the game anymore, you're like, oh, my game sold. It's sort of like as a digital way of knowing that your game had been purchased, and someone walked out with your specific game that you turned in. I think that'd be kind of funny and cool. But everything else around this is shitty. That part is kind of amusing to me. To know the exact moment when when your old copy has found a new home somewhere. But everything's going digital because, like I mentioned, 70 to 80% of people are buying digital. So we can keep fighting for it, but at some point it is going to just go, physical disc. Will 100% on all consoles, even Nintendo at some point, will go the way of the dodo, as they say. So next up, an equally angering story, but not about Xbox, not about game disc. Epic Games CEO argues AI could have made Destiny profitable. Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney has implied that AI could enable games like Destiny to thrive. In a post on Twitter, Sweeney replied to a report on Destiny 2 with, if only some sort of newfangled technology could come along and make it possible to overcome bullet point number 1 and enable games like Destiny to thrive. Sweeney has recently gone on record saying that he believes it is really irresponsible of Steam to make studios disclose AI use. In June 2026, it was announced that Epic's Unreal Engine 6 will integrate AI tools and greatly reduce tedious work in game development. Sweeney's post includes a screenshot of the Forbes article he's replying to, which states that Destiny was only very rarely profitable during its entire lifespan due to the enormous scale of content that had to be produced nonstop. The implication is that AI could somehow streamline the process of creating, or perhaps even entirely generate the content that Destiny players wanted. Interestingly, Sweeney neglected to reply to the article's other stated reason that Destiny failed, which claims that Destiny's period of profitability led to cash being immediately misused by leadership at the time. Yep, there we go. And so my one response before getting into what Night Duck said for the audio listeners is, shut the fuck up, Tim Sweeney. That's my response to this whole article. So, as Night Duck says while I was reading that article for you guys, Destiny was profitable until they fired everyone. 100% true. And they did use Gen AI for the last expansion, which is part of why the community turned on it. This is just Tim Sweeney, again, because they put AI tools into Unreal, just kind of pushing back for wanting, AI to become a big thing. But yes, so my final comment again for this is, shut the fuck up, Tim Sweeney. Thank you. Moving on. Steam Machine users report red line of death. The Steam Machine has only been available for just over a week, and one early user is already reporting a red line of death. The system's front-facing LED can be used to showcase a variety of hardware issues, and a blinking red bar on the right half of the light indicates a GPU failure. Reddit user me_hill posted that picture to the Steam Machine sub as spotted by Digital Foundry, and commenters are already referring to the issue as the red line of death, referencing the infamous red ring of death that indicated a hardware failure on the original Xbox 360 console. The OP went on to share their experience with the device, saying, "Got 5 minutes of No Man's Sky in, then I installed the update the machine had available, and it bricked itself." They go on to reassure those waiting to purchase, saying, "If you're still in the queue, look on the bright side. They're presumably going to iron this crap out. Thank you for beta testing for the rest of us," one user replied. The Steam support website shows what this system's various LED patterns mean, again indicating that this user suffered a GPU failure, possibly the worst and most fatal issue for a Steam machine to have, as repair is potentially impossible. Final Fantasy VII Revelation DLC leaks via Epic Games Store listing. So, Tom, if you're listening to this or watching live, I'm going to give you... I would suggest stop listening right now. I'll give you a little time to jump off the Twitch, stop the podcast, whatever, because the next two games are Amazon Prime's 12 free games. Go research that yourself. And the 3 PlayStation Plus games for January if you have extra or higher. So I will pause a little bit, let you get off this. And anybody else, you can go research those final 2 stories. It's just going to be me talking about those games, not so much news. So I will give you a little bit of time to skip off, and then we will continue. Okay. Final Fantasy VII Revelation has a suite of DLC incoming, according to an Epic Games Store listing. The product page and related DLC can be viewed with EpicDB, as spotted by RPG site. It includes a pre-purchase bonus, premium edition, a premium plus edition, a story expansion pack, and several individual DLCs. Yeah, so I'm going to read this all slowly just to make sure. If Tom is here, he is gone. So I'll let him know in chat as well. You'll see it pop up for the video version. Okay, so before I go through all the stuff that popped up here, yeah, so Final Fantasy VII Revelation is coming out, I believe, in February. So I'm assuming like Gamescom or Tokyo Game Show will get something more, and then we'll get like the final reveal trailer, like the final trailer at the Video Game Awards. I'm just stalling here for the audio listeners a little bit, just so Tom can stop listening here live, because we're for behind the curtain. We're dropping a ton of frames, so I'm basically probably not even close to them hearing what I'm saying right now. So I typed it into chat, and you know, just it's going to be on him at this point. I put it into chat. I've been talking about it a lot, so hopefully he listens. Some of these listings could be current placeholders for the content that will not be released, or they may be minor additional content such as costumes. Yep. So the leak is it's, you know, Final Fantasy Revolution Premium Edition pre-purchase premium DLC 5, 4, 6 digital contents packs 9, 8, 7, 6 story expansion pack pass 5, 4, 3 premium edition with pre-purchase bonus. Premium edition with pre-purchase bonus, DLC 1. Oddly enough, there's no listing for DLC 2. That would have been one of those things to notice. But it's evidence that these listings are not meant for public viewing, which, while it seems like concrete proof that DLC coming up for the game, changes can be made ahead of release. Yeah, so they may be doing post-game stuff with this. No surprise, but interested in seeing if they will release a whole ton of DLC for this going forward. So, yeah. Next up, we have Amazon Prime's 12 free games for July include critically acclaimed RPG Symphony of War. So the free games on Luna, which you can claim, are available right now. Cyclones, Lone Star, and Symphony of War, the Nephilim saga, still there, and regular Factory Escape Room is available July 9th. Polyvita Frame Collection Escape Academy is available July 16th. In Sound Mind and Mystic Academy Escape Room is available on July 23rd. And July 30th is Zora Age of Shattering and Weakless, coming July 30th. Players can still claim some of June's free titles, which will start to disappear over the course of the month. All claimed titles will remain in the player's library until they are removed. Games still available include Tomb Raider 4 through 6 Remaster, Mafia Free Definitive Edition, G.I. Joe Wrath of Cobra. It just says G. Joe. Wrath of Cobra here. Oh, that's pretty funny. So yeah, so if you have Amazon Luna, you know, feel free to go pick up these games. And finally, our last story is July's 3 PlayStation Plus free essentials monthly games include Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. So the 3 monthly games, like I say, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, the worst Call of Duty game. So if you want to pick it up for free, feel free. You're already paying for it. This is joined by For the King 2, an RPG that blends roguelite and tabletop gameplay. It's available for PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. Finally, the third game is Crosscode, a retro-inspired 2D action RPG, which is also available for PS5 and PS4 owning subscribers. All 3 games were available to claim on July 7th until August 3rd, at which point they will be replaced by another selection of titles. As ever, players who claim the games will be able to continue playing them after they're no longer available to claim, as long as they remain subscribed to any PlayStation Plus tier. Yeah. So, yeah. Players continue to June's essential games included Grounded Fully Yoked Edition, Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl 2, and Warhammer 40,000 Darkside. I'm going to go make sure I have at least the Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl 2. That feels like a game that'd be fun to just have. Yeah. So that will do it for the podcast here. Let's go back. It's a big mark. Thank you for joining me. I know we had some technical difficulties here at the end, but for the audio listener, you did not hear it. You might hear some weird transition out of stuff. We'll see what I lost when I lost it there. But yeah, we at least got the last 3 stories in for sure. So we'll see. And I think it started happening while I was reading that PlayStation story, because I did not notice it dropping before that. But we'll see when I download. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. Just for the other listeners out there, and maybe if this is still coming through to the live audience, we'll be back tonight for my birthday to beat UN Squadron. Thursday, Final Fantasy X. Saturday, we're going to be beating Trails in the Sky second chapter. And Sunday for the news hour. I may do something on Friday. I'm deciding, I might even do Tuesday or Wednesday or something as well. Or maybe something on Friday. I don't know. Tuesday, Wednesday for sure. I might try to squeeze in Hattable Boyfriend. I'll let you know about that. I think it'll depend on which day we're not recruiting TC Tam. And then I'll do that then. And then Friday, if I have time, maybe I'll do a stream of just showing off NCAA 27. Not anything hardcore, not anything deep. I'll just start a whole new dynasty and just show it off to everyone. Just so you can see what is going on there. And we'll play a game or two and just basically a hasty glance, essentially, for the best I can do for that. So, yeah, thank you all for joining me. It has been fun as always. Have a good night, and hopefully the Sunday scaries haven't been too bad. Bye!